All right, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, all right. We are going to review real quick Tom Scholz from Boston. Incredible genius. Oh, all right. There we go. All right, this guy created a whole uh, record himself in his basement. He built everything that he used on his records himself. The guy was a gearhead genius. So let's watch a little bit of this because, I always liked Boston. And a lot of people didn't realize that he was Boston. He was the only one besides Brad Depp uh, that was signed to a record contract. He was Boston. So let's check this video out and give props where props are due because pretty much all the records they did were great records. All right, let's check this out real quick. Right, and the video we're watching is how Boston fooled the music industry with their debut album.
Quiet, intense man, half engineer, half musician, crouched in a basement surrounded by a jumble of wires, amps, and custom-built recording equipment.
And as I became more adept at using them, I was able to create all the out-of-this-world sounds that people are used to hearing on Boston albums, but haven't heard before, most likely.
Scholz wasn't your typical rock star. He was a self-proclaimed gearhead with an MIT degree, a perfectionist who spent his days working at Polaroid as an engineer and his nights in his basement trying to make rock history. Scholz's vision was a big one. He wanted an album that sounded like a full band, roaring across an arena, a sound as vast and energetic as the legends he'd grown up listening to.
And then I got interested in playing guitar when I heard I think probably Jimmy Page and Led Zeppelin and Jeff Beck were my biggest inspiration to pick up a guitar and try to learn how to play some of that stuff, which wasn't very easy, I found out.
Yet here he was, making all of this happen alone, in a basement no larger than a glorified storage room, wielding nothing but his musical imagination and technical expertise.
Stop your feet or clap your hands and join us. Come on, get down with our super sound.
Scholz had always been a tinkerer. His background in engineering wasn't just a side gig, it was an obsession that bled into every part of his music-making process.
All right, that dude built all them compressors, all them channel strips. That guy built all of that stuff himself in his basement. The soundboard, everything, even the effects that the guy used, he created himself. The guy was an engineer, guru, all in a basement by himself.
As he worked on the album, he began to build equipment that simply didn't exist at the time, using his technical skills to craft sounds no one had yet achieved from a home setup. Amplifiers, effects boxes, recording devices. Scholz had a hand in creating it all, tweaking everything to perfection so he could capture the vision in his head. It was an unusual process in the 1970s, a time when home recording was synonymous with lo-fi, almost apologetically unpolished music. Most musicians who recorded solo at home focused on intimate, minimalist tracks that leaned into the limitations of the space. But Scholz was wired differently. He wasn't just looking to create music. He wanted an experience, something that would put listeners in the front row of a concert without ever leaving their living room.
He told me repeatedly, no future in music, stay away from it. After Boston became a huge hit, I started a company building devices for musicians, novel, new devices. And I remember him on the phone with me saying, "What are you doing wasting your time on this engineering stuff? You should be making a new record."
During his Polaroid days, Scholz's co-workers probably saw him as a bit of...
Sorry for the breaks, ladies and gentlemen, but they'd strike me if I don't. All right, this dude is a guru. What? You talk about drive. The guy works for Polaroid. He's an engineer. He has a vision in his head. He creates it. No longer does he, or not only that, he creates the vision in his head of making a record. He learns how to play guitar. He builds his own studio in his basement alone and records one of the greatest records ever in his basement. He held the record companies hostage. They wanted him to come into the studio. It was impossible to hear what they heard on that record that he turned in because none of that equipment even existed. They didn't even know that until they went in his basement. And they were like, "Who are you?" And the guy's like, "I'm Tommy Schoen. I created this record demo that you guys listen to." And they were like, "Where's the rest of the band?" He's like, "I am the band." The whole thing in his basement.
of an oddball. He wasn't an ideal employee, by his own admission, frequently showing up late or sneaking out early to get back to his music.
There were days when I didn't make it into Polaroid on time, most days actually. I was a horrible employee.
Scholz knew his heart wasn't in his day job, but he needed the steady paycheck to fund his nighttime obsession. His basement became a sanctuary, a place where he could obsess over every note, every riff, until he had shaped a sound that was all his own. What's remarkable is how invisible his work was. No bandmates, no producers, no one watching over his shoulder. Scholz was creating an album that would eventually become a worldwide hit, and he did it without any hype, without the assistance of a studio, and without so much as a whisper to his peers. Just him, a handful of guitars, and an assortment of homemade gadgets hidden away beneath his suburban home.
And I would just keep experimenting with the equipment until I managed to stumble onto the sound.
When he finally finished recording his demos, he faced another hurdle: getting noticed in an industry that didn't look twice at solo.
Look at the equipment that guy built in his basement. I don't even want to play guitar no more. What am I even trying to sing and play guitar for and do anything? Look at what this guy built alone in his basement. Massive compressors, pre-channels, channel strips, effects processors. You know Rockman? Everybody's going crazy about the Rockman stuff that this guy created, which is an effects pedal and a program system. Guys are killing guys to get him. This is the guy that created it. Tom Scholzs from Boston. They, you couldn't go into a studio and record what they heard because this guy was the only one that had this stuff. Not even the professional studios had the effects this guy had. He I think he cut a deal, 10 records. 10 records. He cut a deal to do 10 records, and I think they compromised and let him do it all in his basement except for one record. That's unbelievable. Memorizing. I don't even want to play guitar. I don't even want to do it. What's my life for? Like Creed's saying, what is my life for? This dude had a vision. And I don't know how he created all this stuff in his own compressors and channel strips and just all the phasers. Electrician, mastermind. Literally, people are like, he didn't do that. He built it himself. He was an engineer. He soldered each piece of little tiny things to little circuit boards, and then to top it off, he's a guitar player on the side.
Low efforts. Scholz's tapes eventually found their way to CBS Records, and the executives who listened to them were floored. This wasn't just good, it was incredible, with a depth and a driving energy that made it sound like a full band performing live. When they realized it was the work of a single man recording in a basement, they were baffled. How could one person capture such a monumental sound? Surely, they thought, this had to be re-recorded in a proper studio with a full band. For CBS, Scholz's methods seemed too unorthodox, too risky for a major release. A band in a studio could be polished, shaped, controlled, predictable. But Scholzs was undeterred. To him, recreating his sound in a traditional studio was a compromise he wasn't willing to make. After some wrangling, CBS gave Scholzs the green light to record the album his way in that same basement that had become his second home. He finally enlisted a vocalist, Brad Delp, whose powerful voice was the perfect complement to the rich, layered sound Scholzs had built. Delp's vocals added a new dimension to the recordings, giving Scholz's soaring guitar lines a vibrant counterpart, one that matched the raw energy of his compositions. When they finished, what they had was Boston's self-titled debut album, a record that would soon ignite the charts and capture the imagination of millions.
The only song that wasn't recorded in that studio is the very last song of the first of the Boston's first album, which is "Let Me Take You Home Tonight," which Brad wrote. So that particular song was actually recorded in the LA studio with all the members that you see on the album. So, and I remember, at least for me, when I was young, I always remember hearing that song and I'm going like, something, it doesn't sound there. It sounded sonically different than the rest of the album, and you could actually hear it. If you place that particular song against the rest of the album, there's a little, it's just a slight disconnect. There's a little bit more, it's a little bit of a brighter sound as opposed to some of the other tracks, as opposed to the rest of the tracks on the Boston album.
Released in 1976, Boston was unlike anything else at the time. Tracks like More Than a Feeling and Foreplay Long Time weren't just songs, they were sonic experiences, engineered to transport listeners to the front row of an imaginary stadium concert. Scholz's meticulous layering of guitar parts and carefully crafted solos made each track feel immense, pulsing with a kind of live wire energy that was almost unheard of in recorded music. It was a sound that would inspire an entire genre of stadium rock, a movement that sought to make every listener feel like a part of something huge and unforgettable. The success of Boston was explosive. It became one of the best-selling debut albums of all time, selling millions of copies and cementing the band as rock legends almost overnight. Scholzs.
Debbie, are you still here? Are you still watching? If you are, I don't want to ever play guitar again. One of the biggest albums ever sold. And it was one dude that did the whole thing originally, the demo tapes. I don't even want to. I can't believe it.
Scholz's basement experiment had become a cultural phenomenon. His approach to recording, stubborn, independent, and technical, set a new standard for what could be achieved outside the boundaries of a professional studio. It wasn't just that he had broken the rules, it was that he had rewritten them. Suddenly, the idea of a home studio didn't seem so absurd. Musicians began to see the potential in controlling every part of the recording process, in crafting their own sound without industry interference. Yet even with the album's success, Scholz's relationship with the music industry remained strained. He wasn't interested in fame or fortune, he was chasing perfection. Scholzs was a musician on his own terms, an artist who valued control over popularity, and his career reflects that tension. He continued to release music with Boston, but each subsequent album would see him pushing further against the demands of labels and producers, determined to protect the integrity of his sound. In a way, Scholzs never stopped being that quiet guy in the basement, tweaking and refining, forever obsessed with achieving something greater. Today, Boston stands as a testament to Scholz's pioneering spirit. It's a record that decades later still feels alive, still holds that elusive sense of immediacy and scale that so many artists strive for. And in every ringing guitar riff, every crescendo, you can hear the echoes of that cramped basement studio, the hum of homemade equipment, the vision of one man who dared to think bigger. Scholzs may have started out alone, hidden away from the world, but the sound he crafted there still resonates, a testament to rock music's power to defy boundaries, to transcend the limitations of place and time. It's a reminder that sometimes the biggest dreams start in the smallest rooms.
Debbie, could you hear the music or hear the video or no? Were they cutting it out? I just can't believe what Mr. Scholzs did. How could anybody have a vision in their head and literally take little parts of transistors and create it himself? I don't know. He was tapped into something. He was a guru. I don't know why he's not working for us in NASA. I have no idea. The guy is unreal. Probably the only band that did a 10-record deal, and he recorded it all in his own house. And you have to pay credit to where credit goes with Brad Delp. His vocals were outstanding. Just outstanding. His harmonizing was unreal. If you look on YouTube, you can find some of his vocal tracks from them songs of just his vocals. and is harmonizing tracks to like 5 different harmonizing tracks with his voice. It's just incredible. And that was all done in that guy's basement. What a genius. Vision. He goes out, creates some stuff to get started, learns how to play guitar. Never played guitar before until he was 21 or 23 or whatever. Learns how to play guitar, piano, organ, all this stuff, bass, everything, except for the drums. He gives me ambition, but at the same time, I don't have the brain. And I'm crushed that I can't believe he did all that on his own. I mean, and he was married. That's all he did was go to work, come home. It reminds me of my father. My father was a big car guy, uh, RCA remote control stuff, planes, hydroplane boats, racing, and all kinds of stuff. And that's what they did. They went to work, they came home, and straight in the basement to do things. I don't know. Great band, one of the best bands America produced, top selling band. Hats off to Boston and Mr. Scholzs. God rest Brad Delt. God rest his soul. He passed away. This world got too much for him, and he left. God rest his soul. You folks have a good night. Debbie, I was thinking about a fire tonight. What do you think? You into a fire tonight or no? Yeah, I've been upsetting a lot of people. You've been talking back a lot in my chat to me, rebelling against me. So, but I was just asking. Of course, you're not listening to me right now. You're not paying attention to me. You never do. Ever. Never. But, well, it's like, you have a good night, Miss Debbie Fox. And I am listening. I am only one who does. Oh, God bless your little heart. But that don't mean I still get my way. But I'll send you a message. I'll shoot you a message. You have a good night. Maybe we'll do a fire.